Welcome. This evening we'd like to begin this session with meditation to two songs. And for both of these songs, I would like for you to focus on your heart. And just keep your focus right there, right in your heart. That'll be good. Okay? Take a breath. Relax. This is the Enlightenment Sangha. It's the path of the heart, of the high heart. I've talked about the high heart quite a bit lately. It's been one of my new revelations of some very old stuff. In the high heart, when you get to this place that is the high heart, right up here, right where your palm is, right here, right there. Very small area. But when you meditate on that and you bring your problems and your issues and you just let that, cast them into the high heart, they will dissolve. And then as you breathe out unconditional love on whatever situation you have. And that key word is unconditional, which means that in the high heart there are no conditions. It is beyond conditions. So when you are moving the Dharma into your life, into your problems, into those areas that are causing you pain or suffering, you're moving an unconditional love into that space. And what that does is it takes away all of those feelings and emotions and hurt and all of that other stuff that you placed on whatever that experience was, until you just get it down to the root. Someone yells at you, they call you an idiot or something. Had that happen to me on the road the other day. I guess I should watch my driving. But anyway, as he yelled at me, there was a whole bunch of anger that came with that. And it hurt. And I was hurt. And I thought, well, let's breathe it into the high heart. So I took that energy, that hurt, and I just moved it into this high heart and held it there until it dissipated. And then I breathed out what I call the wind of Dharma. It does not feel like anything. It is not emotional. It is not rational. It is unconditional, which means that the situation does not have to change. So you say, well, why do that? The reason you do that is when you release from that all of those things that you have put around that situation, then it just becomes pretty simple, really. The man yelled at me because I'd made a mistake driving. And when I removed all of my ego from it, all of my sense of hurt, and all of my sense of defensive or my anger at it, when I got all of that away, it was just some words being spoke to me. There's nothing there, just words. Now this is difficult for us to come to grips with in this New Age community, because what happens here is that we want to fix everything. We want to change the world. So we go out and we're fighting and we're doing whatever we can to get the world to change. We're working hard to rearrange the chaos that's going on around us. And that's well and good. I think if you're going to do something, you might as well do that. At least it's pretty good karma, I would guess, if you're doing it with the right attitude. But in this practice, there is no doing. It's just being. In this face, there is no pain. Even physical pain, you might have physical pain, you might have pain, but it's not pain that you are attaching to. You're not globbing onto it. You're not identifying with it. It's just an experience. At my age, I have a lot of pain, pretty much constant. But I don't pay it a whole lot of attention. I'm not attached. Well, you say, oh, that's all really good. But why is it that I get stuck in situations that are very painful, that I can't seem to get out of? And I'll go back to the time when this fella yelled at me, road rage, as it were. It hit my heart, but it didn't hit high heart. It hit down here. So I'm going to review for about the 50th time the three elements of the heart. The high heart is associated with the chakras that are above the heart. This is your spiritual nature. This is who you are throughout all of eternity. It is your soul. It is your God. It is whatever you can imagine it to be, but it's non-physical, and it is very alive. And this particular one loves you completely. Unconditionally, it loves you. When our consciousness is pulled down toward the root, it enters into the mid-heart. And the mid-heart is half above, half below. So half of this heart is attached to this unconditional. But the lower half is attached to the conditions. In our life, the energy that we walk around the earth in, the energy that we talk to each other with, that we interact with each other, the energy that we use to communicate, to touch, to everything, all of that's down here in what's called the samsara. And the samsara is nothing but a huge rock tumbler. If you have some jagged rocks and you want them to become smooth, you put them in a rock tumbler with a bunch of other jagged rocks. You put them in there and it just tumbles around for, a couple of days. Tumble, 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 tumble. And the edges of the rocks are knocked off by knocking into each other until they become smooth. So the samsara down here is this rock tumbler that your soul is entering into that consciousness. It's coming down into this dream. As far as eternity is concerned, it is nothing but a dream. It is a dream that the Indians call Maya. It is what the Christians called being born into sin. It is the everyday world of news, weather, sports, sex, drugs, rock and roll, power, manipulation, control, and a lot of fear. A lot of fear. So when we drop our consciousness down into the samsara, here where we've lived our whole life is down here. Every once in a while we would have a spiritual experience. Might go to church, have an epiphany, or you touch God, you move up into the higher chakras for a second, and then you drop down and you're down here again. You're dealing with different forces. Down here, there is opposition. This opposes that. Republicans and Democrats, hot and cold, soft and hard, and jagged and smooth, and it goes on and on. It's called a dualistic state. And it is a false state, because in this state there appears to be things in conflict. But when you move up into the unconditional part of the unconditional love that is part of your higher nature, these things don't make any sense. They are a perversion of that beauty, of that love. They are we've taken this singular unconditional love and now we've dropped it into a whole cauldron of conditions. And our ego is waiting right here at the mid-heart. It's waiting because the ego is always trying to define itself. It's always trying to say, look at me. Look how many times you use the word I when you speak. I did this, I did that. Anytime you use the word I, you're in an egoic state. And when you're in an egoic state, you are subject to all of the currents and all of the things that go on down here. Down here is where you were born. Down here is where you were defined. You were given a name, you were given a country, you were given a city, you were given a village, you were given a family, you were given certain economic and educational parameters in your family and social and society. You were given all of these things. You're well defined in the samsara. And your ego is always trying to expand its territory. It's always wanting to grow a little bit more, to expand itself into this world of limitation, to say, look at this, I hadn't thought of that before. Oh, look at me. Now, oh, look at that. And that guy's wrong because I know this is right. And then you end up with all of these forces. And then you end up putting attachments on things. I'll love you as long as, and you can fill in the blank. There's conditions. And when you're loving or experiencing life through conditions, you're living in a hell world. That's just what hell is. Where there is wailing and gnashing of teeth. So when you find yourself in a situation where you're just completely distraught, maybe a pet has died, or you lost a job, or you wrecked your car, your lover betrayed you, there's all kinds of things go on here that can just grab you. They grab you emotionally, they grab you in all of the ways that you have defined yourself. You're dealing now with rejection issues and abandonment issues and anger issues and depression and all of these different feelings, all of these thoughts, all of these. And it's so painful. I wished it would stop, but it doesn't stop. I'll just work through this and I'm sure I'll make it. But you keep working through it, and maybe you do, and then it starts up again. It's samsara. It goes on in a huge circle because it's based upon an illusion of conditions, an illusion of the world and the universe that's not true. The truth about you is up here. People find this truth all the time. When they find it, it drops down to their ego, and then their ego gives it a name. Oh, I've found Jesus. Or Sai Baba visited me. or it can just go on down the line. People have spiritual experiences, and it comes down, the ego grabs it and starts to define it in the way that it can. Because the ego has to define everything. Go into a place where there's a dissolution of all of yourself, and you come back, and the ego says, oh, great, I went into samadhi. It's always defining things. It's always picking this and placing it over here and wrapping it up in a nice little bow. And that's the truth. Somebody else has the same experience and they wrap it up in a different box. That's their truth. And then you talk to them and now you're in a war because they're saying that that's the truth and you know that this is the truth and they can't be the way. This is one ego fighting another ego. You end up in warfare. You end up in hurting each other. You end up creating bad karma. It's an endless cycle down here. It doesn't end until you stop it. I have meditated for a long time. In this life, probably 40 years. 30 years with an enlightened teacher. So when you move up into the high, unconditional love, where you drop the ego and you just move into this space, and when you move into this space, it becomes immense. The reason it becomes immense is because there are no longer any constraints that your mind is putting on it. You're not defining it anymore. You've moved beyond the ego and now you're just into the experience of the dissolution of the self, the experience of samadhi, the experience of the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. But it is beyond time, it's beyond space, it is your true nature. It does not have any points of reference. Anywhere in there is not a place you can hang your hat. It is, when you go there, you realize that you have touched God, that you have become one with the universe. You have become one. There is no longer any two, there's just one. And then as our consciousness is pulled back down through the heart, into the lower heart, we start defining it. Now, it's been asked, what good is it to go here when this is where you're living? And the reason that it's good to go here is that when you remove your angers and your fears and your ego from the experience, when you remove all of your conditions, and hold whatever was hurting you in that space of unconditional love. Then when you do come back down into your body and drop down into samsara, those things that you had defined around that issue are no longer there. You have changed yourself. You have been, in a sense, you have become born again. And then it's almost like we're this rock that's falling through this no conditions, just falling perfectly straight. Not moving, just perfectly straight. And it gets to the heart and it starts entering into the conditional zone. It starts entering into samsara. Now down here there's all kinds of energies going here and there, and parental influence and friends and society and superstitions and fears and all of this terrible experiences we've had, this hell world down here. So this rock just falls there and it enters into the samsara, and now it's being pushed around by this, pushed around by that, and you lose it till you meditate again. But you'll find that each time you can take everything and turn it into this unconditional space, this unconditional love, which means it does not have to change. There are no conditions. My friend has cancer. Does that mean he's healed? No, but what it means is, for me, I no longer am placing a lot of conditions on him or her. I am no longer projecting onto them things that they're not experiencing. They are definitely experiencing their experience, no doubt about that. But I'm not adding to it. I'm seeing them for the perfection that they are. A perfect, sentient being working on its karmas. So as I clear out myself, as I start removing my garbage, as I start removing those things that cause me to push people away or to bring them to me, or all the attractions, all the repulsions, as I start dealing with the fear and the terror that's in my life, as I start systematically bringing it up into the high heart, systematically dissolving it all day long, then I'm able to walk through the world without the darkness. When things happen to me after this experience, instead of becoming angry or judgmental or aggressive, lashing out, or curling up in a fetal position, any of those things. When I come back from this position, I start working on those things. What is it? What is it that I'm afraid of? What is it that I feel limiting me? What is it that I can do to... And then pretty soon you get into this, you start, instead of reacting out of all of this anger and self-defense and all this other stuff that people go through great machinations to do, you start having compassion. You quit being aggressive about making sure everybody knows who you are and what you are and how you are. You take a moment. You quit reacting. The reaction comes from the samsara. It comes from the way you've been taught. It comes from the way you viewed yourself, how you value yourself, all of this reaction. And so you stop it. And now you take just 2 seconds, and then you respond. So it has 2 immediate effects when you do this practice. One, you're not lashing out angrily anymore. And number 2, you're acting out of compassion. The man that yelled at me in road rage was caught up in the samsara. He was full of anger. He was full of self-righteous judgment. He was full of making sure that he was right and I was wrong. Now that I've done that, I see him as just this sentient being having a few problems. And I wish him well. Truly. Why wouldn't I? There are no conditions to spirit. This is called perfecting your soul. As you become awakened to this higher nature, you will start reacting differently because you're no longer reacting out of fear. You no longer feel the need to control or to dominate or to manipulate. Your interest in the recreational diversions, such as sex, drugs, rock and roll, politics, religion, in its formal sense, become less interested. You're more interested in finding that place of peace and then living it in every part of your life. It doesn't mean, by the way, that you are like on Quaaludes all the time. What it means is that you're reacting very directly without all of the built-in conditions that you were born into. You simply come to peace. Not a logical or rational peace, but a peace that comes from deep within your heart. A peace that recognizes that when you are in your unconditional spot, that everything in the universe is there with you. And it's all love. Oh, I don't have a job. I don't have a place to live. I'm sick. I've got, name, just check them off. All the problems that people have. And I start having compassion for me. When my meditation is full of a lot of, I've got to do this, I want to know this, I take all of those I's, pull them in here, hold them in the high heart, and dissolve them. There's a stillness that comes from this practice. There's a transformation that comes from this practice. There's a beauty that comes from this practice. Meditation is no longer a chore. It's no longer something that you sit down and make yourself do. It's just a practice of breathing. And then not thinking. No thinking. And as you're meditating, when these feelings or concerns or angers or fears or whatever come up, you gently pull them up, hold them very carefully, and move them into the high heart where there is no conditions. They have nothing to stick to there. They just simply have no place. And on the out-breath, you fill that void with love. Unconditional love. They don't have to change. The condition doesn't have to change. Nothing has to change except you. It's an interesting experience to go through life without a lot of these artificial conditions that we place on it. I will always have an ego as long as I have a physical body. Everyone does. There are times when I move beyond my ego into spirit. I'm doing it more and more all the time. But there are still times when I'm down in the body. Still times when I'm down there trying to see, well, do I need to change the oil in my car? You know, my little doggy needs to go for a walk. Make sure he's got some food. Got these concerns. But I'm not walking around trying to prove myself. I'm not trying to impress. I'm not trying to gain acknowledgement. I'm not measuring myself against others. I'm simply being. And in that space, that expansive space of beingness without conditions, you become aware of the incredible beauty of the world. It's incredibly beautiful. It's so magical. So you can live your life of anger, outrage, consumed with controlling things, consumed with manipulating life around so that you can be a little bit more comfortable and not care about anyone else. Or you can just be who you are in your higher nature. I'm sure this is going to cause a lot of you to think and to question, and that's good. So now we're going to meditate to a song called The Upper Atmosphere. I love this song. And I want you to take whatever's problems that you're having in your life, whatever is facing you, and some of you are facing some really incredible challenges. I understand that. I want you to take those challenges and indulge with me. Just bring them up to the high heart. And don't try to change them. Don't try to move them around. Don't try to dissolve them. They'll just dissolve on their own. You don't have to do anything. And just keep breathing and then stopping your thought. Just breathe. When these thoughts or feelings come up, dissolve them. Stop your thought. Take a breath and relax. Open your eyes if they're closed. I've made quite a few radical statements, but now I'm opening it up for any questions or concerns you may have. This is a good time.
I like the dissolving thought rather than blocking and fighting
Yeah.
and wrestling.
Yeah, it's quite a concept, because for 30 years, 20 years, I spent blocking negative energy, blocking what I perceive as occult attacks or psychic attacks. And if you understand, that's all duality. It's this against that, this against that. But now we're moving into a more advanced practice here. And this practice, when somebody attacks you, or physically, mentally, spiritually, occultly, no matter how they attack you, psychologically, I think I got them all, you just pull that experience, and it's painful down here. Let me tell you, I'm not saying it's not painful. I'm not saying it's really easy to deal with. It's not. Your ego is very attached to that pain. Your ego is very attached to defending you. It's very attached to making you right and them wrong, or at least defending yourself. And to bring that whole contraption, that whole thing there, all of that stuff, and pull it into your high heart. And pulling it into your heart, it's a very brave thing to do. Because most of the time when we pull things into our heart, we pull it into our mid or our lower heart. And when we pull it into our mid heart or our lower heart, that's where the ego is. And that's where you're going to get hurt, because it has attachments. It's defending itself. It's doing this. It's making this person right and that person wrong. You're building your fortress against, the raiding hordes that are outside. But in this, instead of that, you're just recognizing that it's right here. And you hold it there until it goes away, filling the space with unconditional love. And you just keep doing it until it's dissolved. Now, this is very similar in practice to a lot of things that have been around for a while. In the Carlos Castaneda books, they talk about recapitulating your life and clearing the tonal with the breath. So you're sitting thinking about your life, and then something comes up and then you come back. And you keep doing that until all of these things are dissolved. And that works fairly good, except that there's a lot of ego involved. There's you doing this. In this, it's a slight little change on that. In this, my ego's still involved. I'm pulling the pain up. Notice the eyes here. I'm pulling the pain up. I'm releasing everything. I'm filling that space that I had before that was full of pain and judgment and all this other stuff. I'm filling that space with unconditional love. And then I stop. I stop my thought. So the pain comes up, I pull it here, it dissolves, and then I stop and I meditate. There's no thought. And then when I feel something pulling me down into samsara again, this is good, I live down here. Still no thought. Ooh, I remember that one. That happened to me in junior high. Pull it up, pull it up. Don't push it away. Don't run away from it. Don't run toward it. You just pull it up. And you keep doing it until it goes away. It loses its energy. So it's very similar to sweeping the tonal clean as described in the Carlos Castaneda books. but it's a little bit more precise. This is also something in Tibetan Buddhism called Tonglen. Tonglen doing the same thing, but the people I've seen that practice it don't bring it into the high heart so much. They just bring it in, and they have this, I am better than this, I am, and it's still full of ego. In this, the ego does this, but then it always ends up in a place. If you do it right, it ends up in a place where there is no ego, no thought. I've been kind of practicing a bit, so I can hold it a little bit better than I could at the beginning. But I'm mentioning that because that space of no thought at the beginning may just be a couple of seconds. But the more you practice it, it'll stretch out. It'll stretch out. Stretch out until your ego starts to hone it back in. Hold it back down in some sorrow. So in the path of the high heart, there's no such thing as an occult attack. There are no such things as poltergeist. There's no such things as evil spirits. There's no such thing as anything except love. That's all.
Even if you go to Wendy's and have a frosting, a big burger, and you leave kind of...
You go, okay, well, we need to use a little, but if you feel that, let the body do its thing. Unconditional means you're not changing it. Your body may want to throw it up, but you're not putting a lot of stuff on it. You're not saying, this was terrible for me, I'm going to get really sick now, I'm probably going to get cancer or something. You don't put that stuff on it. You just have the experience, let it go, and wait. I can't change the world. The world is what it is. I can only change how I deal with it, how I am approaching it, how I am accepting it, and how I am including it into my higher self. If the mind is single, the body becomes full of light. We're looking into getting the mind single on every situation. And when we become single and there's not all of this conflict, all of this opposition, all of this fighting, then my body becomes full of light. This practice works pretty fast for those that can do it. Not everybody can do this. I know that. This is not easy for people. You have to be fairly advanced to even get what I'm saying. So we just do the best we can.
Constant effort.
It's just mindfulness, being mindful.
I saw Sai Baba here earlier.
You did? Yeah.
So he brought him up.
Enlightenment tends to be a hang around enlightenment. Yeah. It wasn't Sai Baba, but it was about as close as we can come to it. Who do we know who Sai Baba was? We have this idea of Sai Baba, but Sai Baba is not what people think. Sai Baba was so much more. So much more. So, I'm...
That Nanda Mahima, she says, you only see 1/10,000th of what I am.
Yeah.
With all her efforts and all her stuff.
It's true with all of us. As a matter of fact, we don't see even 1/10 of anybody we know because we're caught up down here in all of these conditions. We can't see people for who they are because they're showing us all of their ugliness, all of their attacking. They're caught up in the samsara down here. This is a rock tumbler. It's not smooth. And if you have a jagged edge, it's going to get clipped. And when it gets clipped, that's your time to pull that rock up and see, that's a good thing. Back down into the rock tumbler. And you'll keep coming down into the rock tumbler until you die. And every time you do, your ego will try to redefine things. It's just the way it works. This is a very high teaching. And again, it's not for everybody. If you don't understand what I'm saying, if it's not clicking with you, then it's okay. One size shoe doesn't fit every foot on the planet. Any other questions?
So you were able to do this while you were driving?
Yeah.
Could you stick your finger out and throw it in the high heart?
Yeah. Well, I find that when I'm in the high heart, I don't need a sense to do that. I don't need a sense to respond. There's nobody there to respond. But yeah, I drove it out. I didn't lose consciousness at all, but I kept pulling that feeling up here. Even though I'm driving, I'm paying attention now because I just nearly got in a wreck, got yelled at. But I'm driving. I'm paying attention to the streets. I know where I'm going, but I'm pulling the pain up as I'm driving. And you can stop your thought when you drive, but you're still aware. You're not going comatose. So, and then you come back. And you're still driving. And oh, there's still more. I'm still that guy. Okay. I've been meditating for over 30 years with my teacher. I always went from the heart, throat, third eye, crown. Right? And I skipped right over this, the high heart. It wasn't until recently when I started examining the heart that I discovered this. Just stumble over it. A little place right here with no conditions. This spot here is where all of this is. If I go in here and I dissolve and I have the dissolution of the self, then these things just pop open automatically. And there's not an ego there to say, okay, now my throat's opening up, and now my third eye is opening up, and now my crown is opening up, and now I'm going into God. None of that's there. You just plop, kind of thing. Pretty simple, really. It's just another technique. Works for me, but that's the size shoe I wear. Any other questions or comments?
Ego is duality.
Yep, ego is duality. Very good observation. There's you and others. You defining your space. You wondering how other people are feeling about you or thinking about you. You wanting to be acknowledged or appreciated, approved of. You wanting to exert your authority. All of this stuff. And those, when you get caught up in those samsaric patterns, you create a hell world for yourself. As I mentioned previously, I had a lot of problems with Donald Trump, our president. So I meditated on him, kept pulling him into the high heart. I started to have a lot of compassion. Here's a man that no matter how much power or how much money or how many beautiful women he has, he's extremely unhappy. He's always angry. I don't approve of what he's doing. But that's my ego that doesn't approve, you see? When I get into the high heart, it's just life. Just life. He's working on his karmas. He's having his experience of his karmas, as is Bernie Sanders, as is, anyone. If I'm judging others, then that's in me, isn't it? So what we're doing in this practice is we're cleaning this huge blobby thing out of our eye. We're just taking it out piece by piece. All of our prejudices, all of our judgments, all of our self-righteousness, all of our egoic, we're just cleaning our eye out so that it becomes clear. When our eye becomes clear and we're at perfect peace and oneness, then when something comes up, someone comes up to me with a little eyelash or something there, I can see clearly to pull it out if they want me to. But as long as I got that glob in my eye, it's not going to happen. It's what Christ said, and I tend to agree with Christ. For your information, I love Christ. Jesus was Jesus. That was the man, not interested. Interested in Christ. Frederick Lenz was a man, not interested. Rama, I'm interested. With me, you should be interested in Shiva. It's the only part that takes you to enlightenment. The rest of it's samsara. No matter how perfect and wonderful it is, it's still samsara. Keep your eye on the goal. Keep your eye on the highest, the best, the brightest. What you focus on, you tend to become. What you touch touches you. So touch the unconditional. Let it touch you. See what happens. Practice it. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Let me know how it works for you. As we used to say, the proof is in the pudding. So if you don't practice it, you're not going to know. But if you do, and you do it sincerely, and you come back in 2 weeks, and it's not working for you at all, you're just getting frustrated, and there's not any little tweaking that we can do to make it work for you, then it's not your path. Simple enough. This is not a very popular path because most religions and most teachers work in the samsara. They're full of ego, they're full of this, I'm going to do that, and they're performing all the time, all of this stuff. And so their message is full of control and domination and manipulation and fear. If you don't believe this way, you will burn in hell. If you don't believe this way, you will reincarnate and have to clean cesspools for the next 10,000 incarnations, and then maybe you'll have another chance. All this fear. This path has no fear. It does not work with control, domination, or manipulation. And for that reason, it's not very popular. Because people like to be controlled and dominated and manipulated, and fear works great with people. But I'm not interested in working with people like that. I'm interested in working with souls that want to escape the hell world of the samsara. To be a light instead of living in darkness. To feel love instead of hate or anger or self-righteousness. So, probably not a popular thing, But this is the message for today. This is today's Buddhism. This is today's Christianity. This is today's message from Sai Baba. This is a message from Rajneesh. It's a message from everybody. It's a message from Trungpa Rinpoche. I'm in pretty good company. You can be here too. It's easy. This is not something that's going to take 10, 20 years. You can get amazing results within just a few months. If it's your size shoe, if this fits you, you will attain a really amazing state of mind in which you're walking around in the Spirit all day long. You are in the world, but you're not of it. In a world of slaves, you're free. In a world of sickness, you're healthy. In a world of war, pain, and suffering, you have compassion.
Can we transfer the serenity that we achieve after the practice to others?
Yeah, in case you couldn't hear that, she wanted to know if you could transfer this to others. I'll tell you how this works. It's kind of interesting. Remember, what you touch touches you. Whoever touches you, you touch them. If I'm full of anger, if I've got self-righteous judgment, if I'm going after this person and after that person and defending against this person and championing this person, and you touch me, that's what you're touching. But if you touch me and as you're touching me and I'm looking at you, and I've already moved you into my high heart, I've already done it just automatically, and you touch me, you're touching unconditional love. And that touches you. No words have to be said. Your life is your message. And this allows you to learn to live your life really cleanly. It takes practice. It takes mindfulness. You can't be sloppy. You can't do it sometimes and indulge in the other time. No, you've got to be pretty consistent with this. It's a daily mantra. In your meditation, as you're meditating, you're stopping your thought for more and more length of time as you practice this. And then as you're doing your meditation, and a thought comes up, need to do my income tax, my car's, maintenance lights on, my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't, you go, pull it all. Just pull it all right here. Breathe it out. It's meditation, no thought. Then when your meditation ends and you come back into life, those parts that, your car's maintenance light or whatever is on, it's whatever's bothering you, you will address that impeccably, directly, without a lot of fear, without a lot of worry, without a lot of concern. You're just basically doing it. You're not trying to impress anybody, although anyone looking at you would be very impressed because you're doing really good work. Why are you doing better than you did before? Because you're not pulling all of this emotional judgment upon this. You're not trying to protect it so that other people will only see, you're just being authentic. You're being real. And anyone that touches you and you're being real and authentic and looking at them through unconditional love, they will react to that. You'll find you're doing this right when you walk around all day long happy. And when you're around suffering, you'll find you're consumed with compassion. So the Sangha are those people who wear the same size shoe. We're all friends here, right? We're friends. Friends are not perfect. Friends have flaws. But in my view, I'm seeing the perfection of them because I see beyond the appearance of their body, of what they're projecting to me as far as their ailments or their finances or whatever. I'm seeing beyond that into the very core of their being. And when I can see that transcendent view of their soul, then they look at me and they feel that. They see it in me, and then they, oh, that's in him, but it's not in me. No, it's the reason they're seeing it in me is because I'm seeing it in them. So just walking down the street, you can enlighten the world around you. It doesn't take many. This is illusion. We're seeking to move beyond the illusion into the truth. Do you have another question?
Can you still will the outcomes you wish for the situations you experience? Say you're having
Yeah.
better jobs to get, can you will the one that you kind of see it has the best option for you with the practice and just not just like let be impartial but be detached but at the same time for what you want?
Yes, we live in the world. See, remember I kept saying we drop back down into samsara? Down here's where you have to go to work. Down here's where you got to pay your bills. Down here's where you've got to tend to your relationships. Down here's where you've got to clean up all of those things of people that you've hated or worked with or people who've hated you. Do your best to forgive. You're doing all of that stuff. But you still have this creative nature. You have this kundalini that's coming through that's creating your world. It's created your body. It's created everything about you. But now as you let go of the negativity, as you let go of your fears, your self-righteous judgments, now you can start to see clearly. And then, for instance, I have a couple of friends of mine who are going through a really, really tough time, like I've never seen. Now, down the road, the ego in me wants something good to happen to them. So I'm trying to dream happy thoughts, strength to make correct decisions, physical improvements. Am I manipulating? Am I controlling? In a little degree, yeah. But as long as I'm doing it for their best, the best I can see for them, then at least the karma is good. Much better to send happy, wonderful thoughts to somebody than to sit there and just be indifferent or angry toward them or disappointed. So it's good. If you're going to send thoughts out, if you want the good job, okay, if you're out of work, you want the good job, you let go of your fear of not getting it. Does it bother you that you would get the right job? No, what bothers you is you're not going to get the job or you're going to get the wrong job, right? So just take that fear up and go, and then you go out and do your work impeccably, without fear. It opens up doors because fear and judgment closes everything off to us. That's why when I say when you move into this space it seems very expansive. The reason it seems expansive is that the fear and the judgments that we have close in on us and keep us very tight, us against them. You know, I'm not able to do that, or, it's nonsense. Yes. Manifesting.
Yeah, put into the scheme.
Manifesting is really cool because we do it all the time. We cannot stop manifesting. You're a creative being. You have a divine discontent. You can't stop manifesting. I mean, you'll manifest laying in bed. I'm not going to do anything, well, you've just manifested laying in bed. So you have a choice between what are you doing with yourself? Why are you manifesting what you're manifesting? And if you're manifesting in life things that are not what you want, then you get to look at why is it that I'm manifesting things I don't want, and you'll find after a while that usually it comes back from being fearful or sensing that things aren't going to work out. So if you want to manifest, let's say, for instance, you want to manifest a job. You want to manifest a job. You're out of work and you want to be creative. You want to be working. You want to put your energy into something that you want to do. So you just start saying, what's keeping that from me? And usually what's keeping that from you is ignorance and fear. Now it doesn't mean you just, I'm going to manifest a job and immediately, although Christ said, who is a great manifester, he said, you have to have faith. Faith is substance of things not present, the evidence of things undissolved, whatever. I missed that quote altogether, but he was saying you have to have faith, you have to believe. You have to believe in the goodness of life. I think believing in the goodness of life brings that to you. What you touch touches you. So you think on the highest and the best. But if you're thinking, I want this, and then you have that magical word of but, and then you put all the negative stuff that your ego puts on it, there you are. So you want the job. First thing I would ask myself is this dharmic? Is this good for all? Is this going to make my life where I can be brighter and happier and more of service to others? That's what I want. It may not be the job I'm focusing on, but I want that perfect job. And I want to be able to help others. Because when we get our jobs, we practice our impeccability, we practice our focus, we practice our intent on the work that we do. And if anyone looks at you, it looks like you're a workaholic. You just can't get enough of your job. You're working there, you're doing an excellent job. You're going back and checking your work. You're doing A work. You're not doing C work. But you know that it's just a dream, that it's transitory, that doesn't define you, it's just something you're doing. Because you're much more than any job you're going to have. But we need to occupy ourselves. We need to spread the Dharma. And the way we spread the Dharma in this case is very simple. We get around people and we just love them. Just love them. So it is good to have good dreams. Much better to have happy, perfect dreams than dreams full of fear, anger, terror of what happens if you don't get it, all of this stuff. No, and this takes practice, my friends. This doesn't happen overnight. Give it a chance. Practice it in little things. Practice it in big things. Practice it for 2 weeks. If it don't work in 2 weeks, do something else.
I love the idea of unconditional love.
Yeah.
It sounds so incredible to me.
Yeah, it is.
I just, like, in the idea of walking, of constantly walking around in that state.
What you do with this, to practice to do it where you can do it in really tough states, you practice it first on your friends, and then you practice it on strangers, people you're not involved with. You know, like maybe the lady at the grocery store who's checking you out or whatever, you just, seriously, you know, whatever. And then you start moving toward the big ones, your arch enemies. You start dealing with your intrinsic fears on life, you know. Oh, you know, Beelzebub shows up. I've seen his cloven hooves outside my window at night, and he's scratching on the window, and oh my God, they got a poltergeist. And you go, okay, now it's time to go there. Now it's time to do that one. But you don't do that one first. You know, build up a success portfolio before you get to the big ones. But when you finally do get to the big ones, that's just pure fun. Because you're dissolving the darkness in its most dense form. So, any other comments or questions? Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Practice on little things. The big ones will come along as you're ready, you know.
The funny thing is, I think sometimes you don't want to give it up.
Oh, now, that's a good one. The question was, sometimes you don't want to give it up. Now we're talking about an ego attachment. An ego attachment that's creating discomfort or even sickness in your life. So then you have to breathe on yourself. That part that's hanging on to something that hurts you. So you pull that part of you, not that other person or thing or whatever. You pull that part of you up. And I do this all the time, by the way. Pull it up. And I love myself. And when I do that, I no longer feel the attachment to something else that hurts me so that I know that I'm around or that I have value because they hate me or whatever. But there's, you know, you just keep doing it to yourself. Yes? Do you have a question?
No, I didn't hit my hand up.
Oh,
I
he's
find
just...
this most interesting because many of these things have actually occurred this week. So
Yeah?
one was I work for myself at many different companies. So whenever there's a new general manager, I go into fear, insecurity, because I don't know if my job's still going to be there.
Right.
And I haven't met the person yet.
Yeah.
So I went through a week of reluctance to show up.
Right.
Because I can show up on my own date. And something was wrong in me.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally one morning I had a breakthrough where I felt that fear and that energy that was wrong in me was I was too much thinking that it's me, I alone, only dealing with the situation. But the morning I woke up, I realized, well, that's just a small part of it. Spirit plays a part in this, both a bigger part than myself, it not only just in me, but in the other too.
Yeah.
So my energy was restored. I showed up. Everything was timed perfectly.
Right.
The GM came in. Everything just went absolutely like symphony, clockwork. It couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
But I also was not, when I realized it wasn't only me, I also wasn't attached to results. The energy, when it returned, it was okay whatever happened because it's bigger than just me. So this might be,
Yes.
since I didn't know I was going to speak, but if I did have a question, one of the things I rarely hear anyone speak of is asking for guidance from something bigger than oneself.
Thank
So,
you.
I don't know.
Thank you. Because that does lead into something that ties in a little bit with your question on what are we manifesting or what's the right way. In the samsara, there are 10,000 paths. And of the 10,000 paths in the samsara, there is one path that is perfect. It is the dharmic path. When you let go of your fear and your sense of trying to control life and trying to do this, and you surrender into spirit, into that path, you open yourself up to that one singular path that is the dharmic path for you. When you follow that path, things work out magically, and even if they don't, it's still magical. It is the perfect choice. Among the 10,000 choices that are there, there is one that is perfect. There is one that is the path of Dharma through this life. And when you find that in your soul, and when you start letting go of all of your fears and your angers and all of this occult and psychic and all this other stuff, you start letting that go. You just come right into the very simplistic part of it, that everything comes from unconditional love. That's the Dharma. That is the Buddha. That is the Christ. That is the whatever you want, Sai Baba, whatever you want to call it. And I'm opening myself up to that perfect, perfect path. I give myself perfectly to the Dharma. There's nothing in my life that is worth more to me than following this path of unconditional love. And conditions hit me all the time, but they're only to test my love. I cannot be stopped, even if they stop the body. Even if they chain and throw me in prison, I will still practice the Dharma. I and my soul are unaffected when I'm on the path. Christ said, all things will work for the good of those that love the Lord, or this unconditional love. It's the good news. This is a way to stop bad karma. It's a way to quit making mistakes. But it requires getting rid of all the things that are getting you off the path, as it were. In the old days, we had the archer would get out and they'd send what was the arrow boy, the one that chased the arrows, out to the target in the distance. The archer would pull back, let go of the arrow, it would hit the target. And the boy would go up and he'd say, you send high, or you send to the right, you send to the left, you send to the lower. Started out as send, S-E-N-D, and it shortened to S-I-N-N-E-D, send. You send to the right, you send. So we're in a world of sin, of people not hitting this dharmic mark. And we suffer. We cause other people to suffer. But when we come in contact with this perfection, then you've hit the mark. You're not sinning anymore. You're living a righteous life. A life of compassion. A life of selfless giving. A life of unconditional love. A life of the correct and honest and uplifting use of the life force that you have, the Shakti that you have in you. So this is a journey. It's a journey of self-discovery in which you are dealing with your sins and you're one by one wiping them out with this unconditional love. People that you've hated your whole life, people that abused you or hurt you or mistreated you or tried to destroy you, you pull them into this place and you just let them go. It's forgiving. Not forgiving and not forget. It's just letting it all dissolve into unconditional love. They don't have to change. But you're not going to view them with the anger, the outrage, or the fear that you have in the past. You no longer feel the need to control or to dominate or to manipulate or to run away from or to shield yourself or to attack. These things go away. You're living a perfected life. So it is something that is worth doing, and it is going to take work. What else you got to do? You came here to do this. And I'm telling you, it's not going to take long. Months. I really, truly believe just months of proper practice. You should start seeing results almost immediately. This is the fast path because we're getting rid of the garbage. We're getting rid of those things that are in the way of us developing and becoming what we could truly be in this life, which is an inspiration, which is the gift of our consciousness into the samsara, loving unconditionally all of God's creation. Transcendence, perfection. The Dharma.
One more question.
Yes.
It's about trust.
Trust.
Now, like, when you don't trust somebody, does that mean that you're not trusting yourself? Or there's, like, how do you, once again, you started unconditional love.
Yeah, so
that
this person has done something and they've continually
let's say they
turned
don't
on you.
continually.
Or maybe they just let you down.
Yeah,
They let you down. Well, who did they let down? Did they let you down or did they let your ego down? Yeah. Trust is something really tough. You know, in order to have a teacher, you have to trust that teacher. When the teacher tells you to do something that you don't feel like doing, like reading a book this thick, if you don't trust the teacher, you don't read the book. It's a little sense of rebellion. But if you trust the teacher, then you deal with yourself. Okay, not hitting it on the mark. Sinning a little bit here, so I'm going to come back and hit this again. You will always have an ego as long as you got a body. Now you have to work on those things that get in your way. If somebody has so caught up in the samsara that they're continually doing things that are not in alignment with your soul. Okay? And they hurt you or they betray you. Part of this is the ego, and part of it is the recognition that, as I said, one size shoe doesn't fit every foot on the planet, and that this person is probably not somebody you should have around. Or if they're around, you have to figure out some way of getting a healing, because it is a wound. And if you can't establish a healing through forgiveness and through love, then it's unconditional. That means they don't have to be around you. Just because you love somebody doesn't have to mean that they have to be in your life. Not at all. I can love the world's worst dictators who are doing all kinds of bad things to their people, but I don't approve of what they're doing. I see that it's our dharma. I will do everything I can inwardly to clean up my view of that whole situation, so that there would be one person on the planet that sees the perfection of the divine manifesting in all of that cruelty and all of that disaster, all of that conflict, all of those karmas coming around as part of the samsara, and I'm seeing through it because I recognize that there's not two, there is just one divine spirit, unconditional. And it's where the sentient beings have taken that unconditional love and perverted it into two. And in that perversion into heaven and hell, in that perversion into righteous and unrighteous, in that perversion of acceptable and not acceptable, in that perversion from healing to causing pain and heartache and suffering. For me, I take all of that energy and there's one person who's not caught up in the samsara. I don't have to go to Syria to bring peace to Syria. That would probably not work. But I can sit at my home and think about Syria, think of the suffering, think of all of the people there. And I can just unconditionally love them all. And I have compassion. A lot of compassion. So that's, it's tough. We have to start with the little things. We'll work up to the big things later. But when it comes to trust, if somebody is continually violating your trust, then maybe they don't need to be around you.
He violated you once in a big way.
Ah.
You know,
But now then, see, now you got violated in a bigger. Now this is a good one. This is a good one. Because it's your ego that feels the pain. It's your ego that's hanging on to, they did this. How could they? It's your ego. Get rid of it. Pull yourself up. Just don't even call it trust. It's hurt. You were violated. Until you are okay. Not with what they did. But for you, you're no longer hurt. And that may take the form of you calling them up and having a discussion. It may take the form of you just not having anything to do with them.
I'm just laughing at myself because I've been saying I forgive, but I haven't forgotten. Now, if you haven't forgotten.
You haven't forgiven. What you have to do is So the new rule is you have to dissolve it in unconditional love. It has to be dissolved. And you cannot do it when you're in your lower heart. And that's where this pain is, by the way. It's down here where the conditions are. So you pull that whole situation, which is very painful probably, it's got a lot of energy in it. You pull it up, and it's so weird up here because it doesn't feel like anything. And you just hold it there until you feel it dissolve. And then when you feel it dissolve, you go, you just breathe this unconditional love into that space. And you do it over and over again until it's gone. That doesn't take away the act that they did and the trust. But what it does is it gives you clarity. And that's what we seek. Clarity for the Dharma. We're going to be moving more into that in the months to come. Because we're moving from the Hinayana through the Mahayana into the Vajrayana. Yippee. So it's a great journey. And with that, we're going to have one last meditation, and that will be it for the evening. At the end of the meditation, this will be it. Thank you very much. This last piece of meditation is called Sunrise, and it has to do, in my mind, with enlightenment. Finding the path, moving out of the darkness into the clear light of the Dharmakaya. It's good. It's okay.